Today on Slough School.
Hi, I'm still Claire. I still work for the Columbia Slough Watershed Council. I'm in a little bit of a different place, as you might notice. Around me is Whitaker Ponds Nature Park here, up in the middle of the Columbia Slough Watershed, and we'll be actually catching macroinvertebrates today. I'm dressed a little differently because I'm out doing field work. So I'm really excited to show you about all the different macroinvertebrates we can catch here and talk a little bit about them. So you might notice that I am here on my knees. One of the things we do, Slough School likes to do, is whenever we're doing work on the dock and we're looking over at the edge of the dock, we do something called knees please, which means you stay on your knees. That way you don't fall over and you have a better time looking at things and doing things. So I'm on my knees. I'm always going to try and keep one hand on the rail as I'm leaning over, but I'm going to show you how we collect macroinvertebrates. So I brought some supplies with me. This is called a D-net. We'll be using this. One of the techniques I want to show you is something called dip and flip. So you dip it in the water and then you flip it out. So again, you dip and you flip. So I'll show you that in real life, but here's a D-net, also known as a dip net. We have a little magnifying glass here that we can use, a turkey baster or eyedropper. We have a little spoon to scoop up some macroinvertebrates. We use ice cube trays. Actually, in my college class, we also used ice cube trays when we did macroinvertebrates because it's really easy to separate them out once we've collected them. And I have this white bucket here that I'm going to fill up with water to keep all of our macroinvertebrates in. I also brought out 2 pieces of paper that have been laminated that talk about some of the different types of macroinvertebrate that we looked at inside. Here is another one for some older students. But the first thing I'm going to do is I need to put some water in here for our macroinvertebrates. So keeping one hand here, I'm going to lean over and I'm going to fill the bucket about 1/3 of the way. Cool. Had to make sure my phone was in my pocket. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my dip net or my D-net, and again we're dipping and flipping. So I'm going to turn this camera a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. So now that I've collected a fair bit of macroinvertebrates, there's some really big ones in here that I'm really excited to show you. I'm going to pull out some of the vegetation because that's what they're hiding on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some water in this ice cube tray. I'm going to lightly rinse these out a little bit so we can have some better visuals. That's one really important thing of science, is making sure to keep and maintain your equipment, making sure it's all nice and clean for each time that you use it. Okay, so I've cleaned this out. I'm going to grab some fresh water in here. So there's just a little bit of water on all of these ice cube trays. And then I'll show you what we do next. Here we are. I'm gonna separate out some of these macroinvertebrates. I'm gonna take my little turkey baster. Actually, that one I feel like it's better to just scoop you. So sometimes, depending on what you're doing, you need different tools. So like I'm trying to get this water boatman that's right here. So I'm going to use this scoop. I'm going to slowly drain out some water. You can't really see what I'm doing. I'm sorry about that. You want to stay in there. But I'm going to put you in there. I don't know what you are. Sometimes you get some macroinvertebrates that you don't know what they are. And that's okay. We're going to identify them in a hot second. We're going to go through and look at those sheets and see if we can figure out what type they are. Oh, there's some snails! That makes me very happy. Here's our bucket of macroinvertebrates. Right there we have a beautiful bug. We're going to figure out if it's an insect or a macro only. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 legs. It has a head with compound eyes, it has an abdomen, and it has a thorax. So looking over at our identification sheet, which one does it look like most to you? I'll give you a second. So to me, it looks like the damselfly larvae. And the way it wiggles in the water, I'm gonna try and shake up the water, see if we can get it to move. Damselflies actually dance a certain way. So when they swim, they have that back to forth wiggle pattern. So you can tell it's a damselfly. There's also a bunch of other macroinvertebrates in here that we can't see. I found an aquatic worm, and there's actually a couple of scuds, but those are not insects. Those are just macroinvertebrates. So here are some little scuds. We have 2 snails. This guy. I want us to look back at our sheet and see what it looks like. I'll give you a second. To me, that looks like a water boatman. So we have a water boatman. We have another 2 damselflies in here. We have some scuds, and we have an aquatic worm in there. And in this one, super cool, we actually have a baby fish. So I'm going to make sure to release that because that is not a macroinvertebrate. Fish have spines, so it does not technically belong in our bucket, but I accidentally caught him, so we'll put him back. Awesome, so we looked at our macroinvertebrates, and I'm going to release them back into nature. So one of the things we want to make sure we do is I take my ice cube tray and I just flip it over really quickly so all the macroinvertebrates are back in. I check to make sure that there's none still stuck in there. 2 of the snails are stuck in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lean over, I'm going to put some water in the ice cube tray, and I'm just going to shake it gently just like that so we can get these snails out. I also am going to take my finger lightly and just help them move along. All of our other macroinvertebrates are back here in this bucket. So I'm just gonna, using one hand holding the rail, I'm gonna just dump these back into the water. I don't see any macroinvertebrates along in my bucket, but I'm gonna reach over and I'm just sort of gonna rinse it off a little bit. You kind of see me going like this. And that's just to get any of the macroinvertebrates who might be in there off and back into the pond. I've cleaned off my equipment. I'm done for today. Thank you for checking in with Slough School. Check in back next week for new content.